Good evening, audience. Welcome to the Scare Void. Here, forgotten stories find echoes, whispered packs resurface ... And the silence, at last, speaks. I am Mr. Void. Your voice in the dark ... But before we delve into the shadows of the night, tell me, do you have the courage to stay until the end? Most who listen ... do not return, perhaps through carelessness, or perhaps because they could never sleep the same way again. If you think you can handle it ... click subscribe now. My name is Whitman, and this happened in 2015, when I was still in college in Corpus Christi, Texas. I was studying marketing at a private university that was quite far from the city, surrounded by woods and a nearly deserted highway. It was the typical quiet university campus, except for one thing. At that time, rumors started to surface that something very wrong had happened in one of the rooms in the north wing. But no one wanted to talk about it. But I was there, and I heard it. It all started with an engineering professor named Mr. Harrington. Even though it wasn't my area, I had to take one of his courses as a requirement of the curriculum, and I confess, he was one of the fairest and most patient guys I've ever met. He treated us as equals. He knew that the content was difficult for us, so he always offered help, extra assignments. He was human, you know. Something rare in a university professor. But one ordinary afternoon, while I was finishing an assignment at home, my cell phone vibrated. A friend from the course sent me a message with a link and wrote, "Check this out. It's at our college." I clicked. It was a local news report. The image froze me on the spot. SWAT cars surrounding the campus, soldiers with rifles, helicopters, yellow tape. It looked like a scene from a movie. I read the article and my blood ran cold. According to the police, an armed group had invaded the campus during the night. They were chasing a suspect and believed he had hidden inside the university. The group entered firing, but what came next is what haunts me to this day. Mr. Harrington, my professor, tried to protect the students who were in the courtyard. He led everyone to an isolated room and locked the door from the inside. He stood alone outside, trying to negotiate with the criminals. They didn't want to talk, and they killed him there, in front of the room, right there in room 13, as it became known. The following week, the university held a memorial service. Everyone was shaken, not only by the tragedy itself, but by his act of courage. No one expected that from a professor, but Mr. Harrington went all the way as a true hero. After that, the class was taken over by another teacher, but the atmosphere never returned to normal. Room 13 was sealed, padlock on the door, curtains closed. The administration said it was out of respect, but a few weeks later, 2 friends and I stayed late on campus on a Thursday. We were sitting near the old building right where that room was located. The idea was to plan a colleague's birthday. It was already after 7, the campus almost empty. That's when we heard it, a cry. But it wasn't just any cry. It was ... masculine, deep, muffled, suffering. It came from room 13. We looked at each other without saying anything. Heavy breathing. The silence said it all. It wasn't imagination, dude. Are you guys hearing that? Josh murmured. I shook my head. Curiosity overcame fear. One of my friends and I went to the door of the room. It was locked, of course. But the upper windows, those narrow ones high on the wall, were open. Since I was the tallest, I cupped my hands for my friend to climb up and peek. As soon as he reached the window, the crying stopped. Out of nowhere, cut off as if someone had pressed a button. He came down terrified. "There's no one in there." "Did you look carefully?" I asked. He climbed up again. He stayed up there for a while, his eyes sweeping the interior of the dark room. "It's empty, ... completely empty." And at that moment, something inside me knew. It wasn't empty. It wasn't someone alive who was there. We ran back to the parking lot. It didn't make sense. The building was already closed. The lights were off. No one else around. But the crying was real. The next day, we commented about it with a colleague of ours. She thought we were making it up. She laughed, said it was a bad joke, that using the professor's memory to do college drama was disgusting. We kept it to ourselves. Until Mr. Ulysses, the campus janitor, heard the conversation and approached. He was one of those old, discreet men, always minding his own business, but that day, he seemed disturbed. "Room 13, he said. "It's not just the crying, there's more to it." And what he told us made us understand that the story was far from over. After our conversation with Mr. Ulysses, the campus janitor, everything became more heavy. He said that, at night, he almost always saw a silhouette standing in front of the window of room 13. It never moved, it never responded, but it was there. Sometimes, he said, it seems like that thing is waiting for someone, or trying to get out. He also said that he has heard chairs being dragged, even with the room locked. And that, on some nights, the power system of the entire north wing crashed for exactly 13 minutes, always at 9:13 p.m. I wrote that down. And the next night, I went to the campus, alone. I positioned myself outside, where room 13 was located. I took a recorder. I wanted to record any sound, even if it was just the sound of a rat or the wind. At 9:12 p.m., everything was normal. But when the clock turned 9:13 p.m., the lights in the north wing flickered, and then they went out completely. That's when I heard it. It wasn't the same crying from the other time. It was someone saying something, deep, desperate, a phrase repeated like a scratchy whisper. "They're still here, they're still here." The voice wasn't familiar, but also didn't seem like that of a stranger. I felt a chill. The urge was to run away, but my body didn't respond. My cell phone froze. The recorder turned off. It was only when the clock turned 9:26 p.m., 13 minutes later, that everything returned to normal. The next day, I went back to college for a class. I woke up a little groggy, a little feverish. A friend called me aside and said, "Were you on campus last night?" I was. "Why, dude?" "The parking lot camera caught you, and it caught something else too." We went to the security center. The security guard, a guy named Ken, pulled up the recording. And there, in the corner of the screen, at 9:17 p.m., I appear standing in front of room 13. But there's another person with me, or rather, a figure. Short, hunched over, as if leaning on an invisible cane. But the face, you couldn't see the face. When the camera glitched, the thing's body turned and looked directly at the camera angle. Even though it was just pixels, you could see. There were no eyes, just holes. After that, things started to get out of control. Night students started saying they saw lights turning on by themselves in that room. There was a new security guard who quit after seeing, according to him, someone waving from inside the window, even with the curtains closed. And then came the strangest thing. One day, the janitor, Mr. Ulysses, told us that, when cleaning the hallway of room 13, he felt an unbearable headache and a smell of burning. When he looked back, he saw, for less than 2 seconds, Mr. Harrington standing inside the room. He said that the professor was ... different. His body seemed covered in dust. His gaze was empty, but he was moving his lips, trying to say something, but the sound didn't come out. Ulysses fled from there and never cleaned that hallway again. And that's when it hit me. Maybe he's not trapped. Maybe he's trying to protect someone to this day. As if his sacrifice hadn't ended. As if the echoes of that night of horror were still repeating themselves, on loop, waiting for some kind of closure. I became obsessed with it. I started researching manifestations in places of collective trauma, about energetic repetitions, and I discovered one thing that marked me. In places of extreme violence, the last emotions can become attached to the space, as if time, there, refused to move forward. Maybe, in that room, On that last night, Mr. Harrington didn't die alone. Maybe the emotions of those he tried to protect, the fear, the pain, the panic are still trapped with him. And maybe what we heard that day wasn't his cry, but ours, the cry of all those who couldn't say goodbye. I never went back to college. I graduated with online classes. Today, the campus is closed. The weeds have covered the gates, and room 13 remains locked. But sometimes, when I drive by there, I roll down the window and I hear it, just for a second, the same muffled sound of someone who never wanted to leave. My name is Sophia. I'm 28 years old now. But what I'm about to tell you happened when I was only 9. My elementary school was small, in rural Georgia. One of those old, wooden buildings with large windows and an unkempt lawn around it. At the end of each year, the school organized a sleepover inside the classrooms themselves. It was a tradition. The girls slept together in one of the blocks with the teachers, the boys in another. No cell phones, no luxury, just mattresses, flashlights, and scary campfire stories. That night, everything was perfect. S'mores, laughter, silly games. I remember going to sleep earlier than most. I was always the heavy sleeper type. But I woke up in the middle of the night, not thirsty, not needing to go to the bathroom, just woke up. I got up from the mattress and went to the window at the back of the room. It looked directly out onto the land next to the school. During the day, it was just an empty pasture, surrounded by a broken wooden fence. Sometimes, you could see some sheep grazing, or an old man cleaning up the weeds. But that night, I saw something different. There was a bonfire in the middle of the field, and in front of it, standing, a man. He wore an old straw hat, tattered clothes, looking like one of those old-time farmers. But that wasn't what scared me. It was his smile, because he was smiling, as if he knew I was watching. He was holding something in his hands, an iron bar, maybe a hoe or a stick butt. It was on fire. At the time, I froze. It didn't make sense, and what he was burning was something big, but I couldn't see exactly what. It was in the middle of the flames, writhing, and even with the fire, he didn't blink. He didn't move. He just smiled. I stayed there for too long, until a friend, Nat, woke up and called me softly, "Sophia, what are you looking at?" I said I was going to the bathroom and asked her to come with me. We crossed the hallway to the restrooms, and to do that, you had to pass near the same side window that faced the pasture, and that's when I saw him again. That figure was still there, standing in the same position. Only this time, he was looking directly at us. "Who is that guy?" I whispered to Nat. "What guy?" she replied. I quickened my pace, pretended I wasn't scared. I went to the bathroom and went back to the dormitory, but that night didn't end there. When I lay down, I closed my eyes, and I saw that smile. His mouth was too big, and his teeth dark, as if they weren't human teeth. The next morning, I tried to pretend that nothing had happened, but I couldn't. That imaged a man standing before the bonfire, smiling as if he knew an ancient secret stuck in my mind the rest of the day. I told Nat what I saw, of course. She laughed. She said it was probably some employee burning trash, but she didn't see what I saw. And that night, he returned. Not personally, but in a dream. I was in the schoolroom again, alone, only on the outside. The field was more illuminated, and there he was, closer. But this time he spoke. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. It was as if the words were muffled, but I understood them anyway. As if he spoke inside my head. Come back here. You saw me. Now it's your turn to be seen. I woke up sweating, even with the fan on. And the next day, I refused to go to the window. But it was no use, because on the last day of the camp, one of the teachers called the whole class outside. They wanted to do an observation activity in the yard. And guess where? Right on the side, facing that land. I lingered behind, walking slowly. That's when I noticed. The wooden fence that separated the school from the pasture was broken, and there were footprints, large footprints, like boots, as if someone had passed from there the night before, and more. There were remains of something burned on the ground. I couldn't identify it, but the smell, it was a mixture of burned metal and wet meat. Are you okay, Sophia? The teacher asked. I could only say that I had a headache. But at that moment, I was sure someone was there, and he saw me. Months passed. I went back to my routine. I went back to sleeping better. I thought it was just an isolated experience, a strange memory, until the day when, as an adult, I went back to the city to visit my parents. I passed in front of the school. Today, it's deactivated, closed for years. The weeds have taken over everything. The land next door, the same as the camp, is covered in tall grass. But there's something that chills me to this day. When I stop the car to observe the old school, I swear to everything that I saw someone standing in the middle of the thicket. Same hat, same posture, same iron bar in his hands, as if he had never left. Sometimes I wonder if that place was just an abandoned field, or if it was some kind of passage point, a threshold between this world and another one, older, darker. I never spoke to anyone about this again, but every time I see a bonfire lit at night, I remember that smile that said, you saw me, now it's too late, and you. Have you ever felt that you saw something you shouldn't have seen? Something that saw you back? Leave it in the comments. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. It all started when we moved into that house. Me, my husband, and our 2 daughters. The youngest was 5 years old. The oldest, 13. The house was spacious, 2 stories, a simple yard, and right across the street, a public school. When I saw the school building, I even thought it was convenient. I thought that, next year, my youngest could already study there. I could take her on foot. At least that's what I thought. But it wasn't long before I started to realize that there was something wrong with that place. Something invisible during the day, but alavand watchful in the wee hours. On the first night, everything seemed normal. My youngest daughter was sleeping in our bed, as she always did. The window of our room overlooked the schoolyard directly. It was around midnight. I was already dozing off when I heard the bed creak slowly. My daughter had gotten up. I went to look and saw her standing, pressed against the window, watching outside. I asked her what she was doing. She replied in a calm voice, as if there was nothing strange about it. "There are children outside. Mum, they're jumping rope." My heart froze. I went to the window, outside. There was absolutely no one. Empty street, dark school, no sound, just the light breeze stirring the trees. But then I heard it. Laughter of children coming from the schoolyard. Low, like whispers, but distinct. Little voices, playing in the night. My daughter was pointing excitedly. "There, Mum, look, they're calling me." But I didn't see anything. I only heard, and that was the worst. The next morning, I asked my oldest daughter if she had heard anything. She said no. She slept soundly, as always. I tried not to think too much about it. Maybe it was just my tired head playing tricks. But then, the next night, I woke up to my little daughter, laughing. She was again pressed against the window. "Mummy, he's making funny faces at me." I ran to her, and that's when I saw it. A small shadow crossing the schoolyard, running through the shadows, as if it were hiding, very fast, but very clear. It wasn't an animal, it was a child's figure, and it saw me, stopped for a second, and then disappeared again into the shadows. My daughter pointed. He said hi to me, with his hand. I took her back to bed. This time, I closed the curtain, and I sat on the floor of the room, with my back to the door. Listening, they came back. The laughter running, whispering, laughing, until almost 4 in the morning. I knew that it wasn't normal, and then a neighbor gave me the answer that I didn't want to hear. The morning after that night, my oldest daughter came to talk to me. She had also heard the laughter. "It sounds like there were children playing in the street, Mum. Like around 4 in the morning. Did you see anything?" I shook my head. I didn't want to scare her. But yes, I had seen and heard. It wasn't the street, it was the school. Always the school. It was on that day that I met an older neighbor in one of the nearby houses. We greeted each other. She was kind and direct. "You moved in recently, right? That house in front of the school stays empty." I found the comment strange. I asked why. She looked at me for a few seconds, with an expression that the elderly make when they don't want to say too much, but they're going to say it anyway. "You've already heard, haven't you?" I stopped. I didn't answer. She continued, "The children who play at night in the schoolyard." The feeling of ice rising up my back was instantaneous. "What are they?" I asked. "Who are they?" The neighbor sighed, as if she had already told that story other times. "Years ago, there was an explosion there. Gas leak. The building was new. It was barely 3 years old. It was in the first grade hall. The children were inside. The gas leaked for hours. When it exploded, no one survived. Not even the teacher." My throat dried up. She continued, "Since then, the school has never been the same. They say they're still there, that they still have recess, even after death, that they appear only to those who live in that house across the street." I went back home feeling heavy that night. I didn't sleep, and for the first time, I waited awake with the window open. And then, at 2:17 a.m., the laughter returned. Only this time, it came with company. I saw 3 shadows running in the yard. Children, jumping, pushing each other, playing ring round the rosy. But there was something wrong. They didn't cast shadows. And then one of them stopped, turned slowly, and looked directly at me. The face was blurred. like a mixture of smoke and flesh. And even so, I saw it. I felt it. It knew I was there. It wanted me to see. My little daughter woke up behind me and said, in a sleepy voice, "Mummy, can I go play with them tomorrow?" I froze. That morning, I made the decision. I talked to my husband. I didn't go into details. I just said that the house was wrong, and that, for the good of the girls, we needed to leave. We moved 2 weeks later. Today my daughter is 15 years old, and she doesn't remember anything. Not the laughter, not the shadows, not the nights pressed against the window. It's as if that part of her life had been erased. But I remember, and sometimes, when I'm near a school, and I hear children's laughter, at a time when there shouldn't be anyone, I know they're still around, waiting for someone else to look out the window. Have you looked out yours today? You've made it to the end. Congratulations. Not everyone does. If these stories gave you chills, made you glance at the dark corners of the room, share it with someone who needs to know the price of certain desires. Subscribe. The next account might be about someone like you. This is Mr. Void, and until our next journey through the shadows of the scare void.